and of the Holy Spirit, one God. Dear brothers and sisters, the parables which we have in the Gospels often make us reflect. They're there to something for us to ponder on, to contemplate in our hearts, in our minds, and no less those that begin, the kingdom of heaven is like this. There are some 11 of those in the Gospel of Matthew. And the thing that we have to reflect on often is what part of this is like the kingdom of heaven. Because it's very rarely that the totality of the parable is the kingdom of heaven. There's usually some aspect of it that we're to focus on. A classic case, of course, is the unjust judge, or the tired and cranky judge, if you remember, where the woman comes with her petition. She comes again and again and again. And God forbid that we should imagine that God is like that very cross and tired judge. Rather, the point of that parable is the woman's persistence, right? I actually have to fight a lot of times, people in confession, this idea that God would be like that he would be cross and impatient and so forth. Far from it. So the parable sometimes is a bit of a conundrum for us to work out what aspect is like the kingdom of heaven. And no less this morning's parable, which is about the vineyard and the Lord of the vineyard who has to have people come and work in it. It's harvest time. And if we were to read it in its totality, we would imagine the kingdom of heaven is a bit like a disruptor of labor markets, right? Someone who goes in and just causes utter chaos in the economy. Trade unions would not like this vision of what the kingdom of heaven is like. Surely that's not the point here. If we look a little bit more carefully, the Lord is drawing our attention especially to the last group of people. Let's review again what happens. The Lord of the vineyard needs people to work in the fields. And if you can imagine what it's like in Palestine in the first century and working in a vineyard, it is no easy task. It's hard, back-breaking work. It's hot. It's done in the heat of the sun. Not a fun job. But this Lord of the vineyard offers a pretty good deal. He offers a denarius. Now that's a full day's wage for a Roman soldier. Not a bad offer for a vineyard worker. So of course, even though he goes out first thing in the morning, the first hour it says the sun is rising, he gets a fair crew put together. They agree. We'll accept this denarius. This is a great deal. Can't imagine what better thing we could do today. We're going to work. It's hard, it's hot, but we'll take this generous offer. And so they do. But more workers are needed. So at the third and the sixth and the ninth hour, this Lord goes back out into the marketplace and gathers more. And for them, he says, I'll pay you what's right. Okay? Now they've seen the first lot go off with this very generous offer of a denarius. They must be thinking, we've got it made. We're going to get some proportion of that. That's pretty good for this amount of work. He still needs more. And 1 hour before the end of the day, the 11th hour, he goes out. And he finds some men he hadn't seen before. Where have you been? What are you still standing about for? Why are you not working? And they say, and this is what the Lord is trying to draw our attention to. They say, we had no one to hire us. You know, we think in the first instance, well, this is a bunch of indolent folk. You know, they're just lazy. But they had no one to hire them. What does that mean? These are the ones that were overlooked. The world doesn't pay them much attention. Nobody wanted them. Maybe they were deemed unemployable, right? Maybe they had some defects of character or of physicality or something that made them unable to be considered for the employment offer that was offered several times during the day. These are the outcasts. These are the people at the margins. These are the little ones, the poor, the lonely, the humble. And they, too, are brought in by the Lord to work. Now, very soon after that, of course, the work's done for the day, and the Lord says to his servants, let's now pay them, starting with the last. No, start with the last who have arrived. And they get the denarius, right? They get the full day's wage given to them. And so you can imagine how delighted they're going to be, right? Nobody had even considered them in the first place for employment. They weren't even worthy of society, let alone employment. And they're getting a full day's wage for a Roman soldier. Not bad. You can imagine what the others are thinking, right? The 3rd, 6th, 9th hour, they've been told what's right. Well, if 1 hour's work is worth a denarius, they've got it made. And the people who'd been there all day, you know, the really hard-working ones, the ones who were super fit, super employable, they had it all together. And you can imagine what they're now thinking. Denarius for them, we've been here 12 times longer. Let's work that out, you know. They each get a denarius, which of course pleases the earlier folks to no end, right? They start grumbling, right? They grumble against the good man of the house, it says in the translation we have. I like that, the good man of the house. Now, what's changed here, right? In the morning, that was a really good deal. That was the contract they made. They were thrilled with that offer. It was a wonderful, generous offer. Nobody had ever heard of a denarius for working in a vineyard for the day. This is unheard of stuff. And at the end of the day, they're grumbling. How awful a person this is. Look what he's gone and done. He's only giving us a denarius. And he's given those lot 1 too. And they've only worked an hour. We who toiled in the heat of the day, who worked hard. How is that? It's not fair. Not fair. Does this sound familiar at all? Resonate with anybody? You know? What does this remind you of, first of all? The 1st, the 3rd, the 6th, the 9th hour, and even those at the 11th hour. Of course, on Pascha night, right? The sermon of St. John Chrysostom. When, in that beautiful celebration of Christ's holy resurrection, we read that homily from the 5th century, St. John, the golden-mouthed, who proclaims, and in every Orthodox church this is proclaimed, that even those who did not arrive at the 1st hour, and in that context, obviously, those who haven't been around through all of Lent, right? Who haven't made all those prostrations, who haven't fasted, who haven't given alms, who haven't attended those vigils, those long services, or haven't been there every day in Holy Week, kneeling and bowing and lighting candles and singing and serving. All those people who haven't been around, even those at the 3rd, even those at the 6th hour, St. John says, are welcome to the feast. Even if from the 9th hour, don't hold back, right? This is the joy of the resurrection. It's for all. And even, he says, those who came at the 11th hour, don't turn away. Join in the glory of Christ's holy resurrection. I'll wager most of us, and many of us are there from the 1st hour, most of us are okay with that on Pascha night, right? The joy of the occasion, right? The euphoria of the celebration of the resurrection, slightly dizzy-headed from fasting, maybe. But we're kind of willing to let anything go at that point. The prospect of meat and cheese in the near future, possibly. But sure, at that point it makes sense. Come one, come all. You're all welcome. Share in the one joy and grace of Christ's holy resurrection. But somehow it's supposed to apply all the time, not just on Pascha night. That's where it becomes a little trickier, right? Because a lot of the time, we've kind of made our little contract with God. I don't know, nodding heads there. Yeah. We've made that little deal. God, I'll do this. I'll carve out this amount of time, my daily Bible study. I will fast this week on Wednesday and Friday. I'll give these alms to the poor. I'll give up this thing in order to help somebody else. If all of these things happen, then surely we can negotiate here. I'll expect something in return. That's how we proceed often in our spiritual life. Forgetting that the covenant was made with us in the first place. And that covenant was to make us part of God's holy family. The promises were made in the first instance to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And we are made members of that covenant family. Through time and space, we become the friends of God, sharing in the one grace and glory of his kingdom. There are no side agreements. There are no codicils for our particular case if we achieve a particular, no performance bonuses or anything like that. It's one family, one grace. And yet so often we look, as it says in the gospel this morning, that evil eye, that jealousy, that envy. We look at our neighbor, or we look at someone that we don't think is worthy of being there. Someone who entered too late, or the wrong door, or doesn't have the right background, ethnicity, social class, style, what have you. Somehow they are not worthy of what we should be worthy of. And we grumble. We grumble against God, who gave us everything he promised from the beginning, which was to be made heirs of his kingdom, sons and daughters of God the Father himself, united to his Son Jesus Christ, sharing in everything that he gives us through his death and resurrection. That's our inheritance. There's no further plan, negotiation, reward. This morning we continue to celebrate the feast of the Dormition of the Mother of God, the falling asleep of Mary, the Mother of Christ, the Mother of God. And in the church, those of you who know the way this feast is celebrated both in anticipation and on the day, you know it's a mini Pascha, right? A lot of the same services we have in Holy Week are reprised. We have the Lamentations for the Theotokos, like we have the Lamentations for Christ on Holy Saturday. We celebrate the translation to life of Christ's Holy Mother as a fulfillment, an extension of the resurrection of Christ, because we know everything that she undergoes will happen to us. That's the promise to all of us. So this mini Pascha links us back to Pascha night, links us back to that sermon of St. John Chrysostom, links us back to those words that say, even those who come at the 11th hour receive the same reward as those who come at the first. All of us are made heirs of the one kingdom. In the hymn we sing that although she was translated to life, the Theotokos did not forsake the world. Did not forsake the world. The purpose of this liturgy, every week, but especially embodied as we did it today, the purpose of this liturgy every week is not that we, in some sort of special cabal of first hour folk, maybe a few third and sixth, who knows, maybe a few ninth hour people sneaked in, that we separate ourselves from the world in some kind of holy huddle, awaiting the special rewards given to us. Not at all. The whole point of the liturgy is that it is offered for the world, for everyone, for each and every person, even the ones the world overlooks because, well, they don't fit in. They're not first hour employable types, or third hour, slightly dodgy, but we'll take them in, The people the world overlooks, that's what we celebrate the liturgy for. And so in our hearts, in our minds, every week we gather here, we bring that world with us. And we offer it up to God. We ask God to bless it and fill it with his grace, that his love permeates every part of it, that his light shines in every dark spot, like we say on the night of Holy Pascha, when we light those candles, right? For the light of the resurrection, we carry them forth. Mary, the Mother of God, exemplifies that totally in her life. She's called full of grace. Full of grace. Not extra grace, but full of grace, like every human being can be. And she suffers with her Son, she suffers with the church, with a love that is unfailing, a love that does not forsake the world. Thou didst not forsake the world, O Theotokos. That's what those words mean. She suffers and prays for and loves the world. Remember when the Archangel Gabriel first came to her and told her the ridiculous proposition that he offered, right? That she, a teenage girl, unwed, would become the mother of God himself. And she said, "Let it be to me according to thy word." Then she sang a song, right? She sang a song which we love to repeat and have in our daily prayers in Matins. It's the 9th ode of the canon. But what do those words say? Note, from the beginning, she is concerned to love the world and care for the world. The Lord has shown strength with his arm, and he's thrown down the proud and the mighty, right? The humble he's exalted, but the mighty he's cast down from their seats. The hungry will be filled, she says, but the rich will go empty away. But why? Why does she know all that? Some sort of special revelation to her? Not at all. She says at the very end of that song, why? Because God is faithful to his promises. Thou hast promised to thy servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In other words, she knew what the covenant was about. She knew what God's covenant faithfulness was leading to. And she knew God would not break that promise. He agrees with us, the denarius, except the denarius here is life eternal in his holy kingdom, grace and glory and love forever. And he agrees that with us, and he offers it to all, and expects us, like the Theotokos, not to forsake the world, to go out into the world and to bring people into his love, into his grace, into his love, into his glory, into his kingdom. Dear brothers and sisters, that's the way we celebrate the Dormition, the falling asleep of the Blessed Mother of God. We do not forsake the world.